Hi, my name is David with DK Cattle Company. Today we're going to talk about how much a Dexter cow costs, which that's a very loaded question, which is going to require a lot to break down. So let's get into it. First, let's talk about registered versus unregistered cows and where you'd use one versus where you'd use another. A registered cow is going to have traceable lineage that you'll be able to see who the parents were, who the parents' parents were, and who the grandparents and etc. were. Those animals are used in breeding operations where the breeders intend to sell the calves, either heifers or bull calves, to other breeding operations for other breeding stock. If you're using them for a beef operation, by all means, you can use them for that with that option down the road. But those are generally what registered stock are used for. This can give you a lot of flexibility as a breeder because if you're using them for beef, but you have a really good bull calf that you want to sell, as a registered animal, that would be a very good idea to sell that animal as a registered bull calf. So it kind of gives you more flexibility. Unregistered animals are typically used as for beef producers, people that are just having a backyard herd to produce beef. Maybe they're just producing beef for their family. Many of those herds are unregistered stock, and they're great. You can find really good unregistered animals for good prices, especially where we're at in Northeast Ohio. There's a lot of good unregistered stock out here. I have both unregistered animals and registered animals. Now that we've talked about registered versus unregistered animals, let's talk about certain genetic markers that make a big difference in value for Dexter cows. One of them is their polled status. So if they have horns, if they're heterozygous polled or homozygous polled, or polled but they don't know what it is. The least valuable in the marketplace right now is horned animals. People either love the horns or they don't like the horns, but they tend to bring the least amount of money, and they tend to be your cheaper Dexters. Heterozygous polled animals mean that they don't have horns, but they are capable of having horned offspring. These are desirable. A lot of people get heterozygous polled females and then a homozygous polled bull, because a homozygous polled animal will never have a horned calf. Meaning that if you had a herd of horned females and you had one homozygous polled bull and he bred all those females, every calf from that male is going to be no horns. It's going to be a polled animal, as it's called. All of those different things make a huge difference in the value of the animal. Homozygous polled animals are definitely getting a premium right now. Another big delineation is going to be its chondro status. If it's a chondro carrier, if it's a non-carrier, and if it's chondro positive or non-positive. Chondro is short for a longer word that I'm not going to try to pronounce. And what that is referring to is the dwarfism gene that is present in some Dexter cattle. It makes a small Dexter even smaller. With good breeding, you can achieve a very small Dexter without it, but a lot of breeders have it, and it's sort of a controversial subject in the breeding community as to if you should have it or not. I've always stayed kind of neutral on it, but have stayed away from it personally in my herd. I don't have any chondro carriers in my herd, which means that there's no possibility of having a calf with the dwarfism gene in my herd. It's a personal choice, but something that is something to look out for and definitely a factor. There's another genetic marker called PHA. I'm not going to pronounce that one either. You just want to make sure that they're negative. They have a negative PHA status. All right, so let's paint with a really wide brush and talk about generalizations of value in Dexters. Generally, you're going to start seeing animals for sale between 4 to 6 months old. depending on when they get weaned off of their mom. But it's going to be a weaned calf. For male calves, especially steers, it's going to be generally $100 a month old. So typically, a steer under a year old is going to go for $600 to $800. They can go all the way up to $1,000, maybe $1,200, at least where we're at in Northeast Ohio. For female heifer calves, especially unregistered female heifer calves, that can remain pretty true with them as well. Generally between $600 to $1,000 is a pretty good benchmark for them. That can vary a little bit regionally where you're at, and also the temperament of the cow, if it's halter broke, things of that nature. A heifer's value will kind of taper out between $1,000 and $1,500. Again, that kind of is dependent where you're at regionally, but where we're at, it would be hard to sell an unregistered heifer, even one that's like ready to breed at 1.5 years, 2 years old, for more than $1,200. You'd be kind of asking. You'd have to have like pretty desirable genetics to do that. Now let's talk about registered females, heifers, all the way up to cows. With them, they can vary wildly because of that registration status. You can see their genetics and their lineage, and that lineage and the names on their registration will make a big difference in value. Some people really put a lot of weight on certain names on that piece of paper, and that can really skew the value. So some are just naturally more money than others. This is a harsh generalization because those registered animals I've seen as cheap as $700 for a registered heifer calf, and I've also seen them as much as $2,500 for a registered heifer calf. Generally, it's about $125 to $150 for every month old, and generally caps out at about $1,200 to $1,500 as an animal is 1 year to 1.5 years old. And every couple $100 past that $1,500 is going to demand better and better genetics to top out at about $2,500 would be the most you could probably get for a heifer in our area. Again, that's a pretty harsh generalization, and everything, comes with something. Some people value some things more than others, and there is different factors in there that can kind of skew that one way or another. But that's generally, if someone's asking $4,000 for a heifer, that's ridiculous. That's where we're getting to, is that there's certain things that can vary, but if it's grossly different from that, there's something going on there. As the heifer gets older, let's say a bred heifer, think of that bred status as like a $700 bump, maybe $750 bump. So if someone's asking $1,500 for a bred heifer, that's a good deal. $2,000 is still a decent deal. $2,500 is about cap for a bred heifer, and you want to make sure that the bull that it is bred to is going to be a desirable bull, that you're going to want to bring those genetics into your herd if that bred heifer has a heifer calf. Then we're getting into cows. So this cow has had a calf before. Maybe that calf is by its side. Again, that's probably another $750 to $1,000 premium once that calf is on the ground next to it. A cow is going to be worth more money. It's a proven animal. That animal has had a baby. It proves that it can have a baby. The hardest calf that cow is going to have has already happened. It's already had a calf. It's not a heifer anymore. So that animal is going to come at a premium. I've seen a bred cow can go up to $3,000. I think that's about the cap. Once you start getting over $2,000, it's just hard. It's hard to find people to pay that for an animal. I've never paid that much just because I would generally err on and buying cheaper animals in the form of younger animals than to go to the more expensive older animals, knowing that you can just raise them yourself. I think a lot of people feel that way. That's why it kind of teeters out. So we talked about heifers and cows. Now let's go to the even wider market of bulls. So for unregistered bulls, just refer back to what I said about steers, because an unregistered bull is just a steer that hasn't been cut for the most part. There really isn't anything special about it, not to cut down. There's some great unregistered genetics, but that's just how those values go. For registered bulls, they can vary wider than the cows. I've seen 6-month-old calves go for as much as $2,500, and I've seen 2.5, 3-year-old bulls go for as much as $4,000. Where those lines kind of meet is that polled status. Homozygous polled bulls are going for a huge premium right now. And so much so that I've seen heterozygous bulls, really good genetic heterozygous polled bulls. So they have good genetics, they have good lineage, but they're heterozygous bulls, have a hard time getting moved in the market, where a homozygous bull, they're just moving a lot better right now. So the polled status makes a huge difference. The genetics make a huge difference. The lineage of those genetics rather make a huge difference. But those calves, starting at about $1,000 all the way up to $2,500 for a calf. I bought a calf at $1,800, and he has pretty good genetics. I would say he's homozygous polled. He has a good lineage and stuff. I think I got a fair deal on him. I don't think I stole him. I think I got a good deal on him. But that's really the market for those younger animals. It's an unproven bull, so that's the gamble you're taking in buying a younger bull. As they get older, into 2.5, 3 years old, that's kind of the prime for a bull. 2 to 3 is kind of the prime for a bull. So when you're looking at those animals, that's when you're going to get into the $3,000+ bulls for really good genetics, prime of its life bulls. If it's not the craziest, desirablest genetics, more like that $2,000, $2,500 range, and it's not the prime of that bull, same thing, $2,000, $2,500 range. I've seen really good bulls in that 5 to 6 year old range, where they're older, but they still have years of production left in them. Sell for $2,000, $2,500. And the good thing about those bulls is you know they're gonna produce, you know they're gonna do their job, as they say. They're proven, and they have really good genetics, and they're just a little older. You know, they still have years of service in them. A lot of people breed their bulls all the way 10, 12, 14 years old. So there's still a lot of service left in those animals. That's a good value. The calves are a good value. If you need an animal, if you want a really tight breeding window, a really tight calving window, nothing's going to beat a 2 to 3 year old animal. So don't think that those 2 to 3 year olds are a waste of money. They're not. I mean, they serve a purpose. These are animals that are in the prime of their life. They're going to produce. They're going to be very consistent in servicing the female cows and doing that job. So you get what you paid for in a way with that stuff, especially when it comes to the genetic stuff. You get what you pay for as far as the lineage, and knowing what that animal is kind of capable of producing, if that makes sense. So now that we've kind of gone over that and the kind of wide berth of all that is Dexter pricing and stuff, let's bear some other things in mind that can affect the prices. So I am speaking to Northeast Ohio and my limited experience of inquiring about different animals and my experience of getting animals in the last year. I would say that those prices are pretty consistent through the eastern United States-ish, to Texas and Missouri and Arkansas, Oklahoma. that southern United States, that area of the United States, you can vary a little bit on that, but that's pretty consistent through there. Going out west, your pricing will generally start to go up into Montana, Wyoming, Oregon, Washington. It can start to get a little bit more pricey for animals. But for those premium animals, the premium prices generally stay pretty consistent across the board. When talking about the best time to buy, it's generally the fall, because a lot of producers breed their cows to have calves in the spring. You're generally going to have weaned calves for sale at 4 to 6 months old, and that's generally the fall. So a good time to buy is the fall, but also a good time to buy is the spring. Obviously, there's animals for sale throughout the year, but the spring and the fall is typically when you see the biggest influxes of animals for sale. Where I look personally is Facebook. There's also a website for them. It's called like Dexter Marketplace or something like that. But Facebook is a good resource. The breeder groups in Facebook, there's a ton of breeder groups on Facebook. And Dexter Marketplace. I would never buy a Dexter at auction. Auctions, in my opinion, are reserved for commercial animals. Dexters are not a commercial animal. I would not buy them there. I would not look there. I would look on either Facebook, find a breeder on Facebook that's local to you, or Dexter Marketplace or something like that. Now that we've talked about sort of the values and prices that I've seen, let's go over my herd, because it's a good hodgepodge of different animals I've registered and unregistered stock, to kind of get an idea of what I paid for them and how these values actually play out to actual transactions. So actually, let's go over here June right here real quick. June is a red polled heifer. I got it 6 months old, and I got her for, I think, $800. So I paid $800 for her, and the reason I paid $800 for her, she's unregistered, which is a negative, but she's red and she's polled, which is a pretty desirable pattern right now in the market. And as we walk over here, Gertie is the black cow here. She's one of the first cows I got, and I got at 5 months old. She's horned in black, which is honestly probably the least desirable genetics right now. And I paid $600 for her, and she was a good deal. She's been great. She has a really good personality, so she's worked out great. Ellie, I also picked up with the original 3 are Mabel right there, Ellie, and then Gertie right here. Ellie, I paid $800 for as well. Ellie can be registered, and I'm probably going to try to register her at some point. I just need to get back in contact with the breeder that I got her from. Mabel, I paid $900 for. She was bred, but she was bred very young. We ended up losing the calf, so that was kind of a poor investment. But that's why I got hers, because again, she's red and polled. Pippa, I got with June. I paid $700 for her. She's red and she's horned. When I first told the breeder I was going to take her, we didn't know that she had horns, and then she had horns, and I didn't want to not get her because of that, so we got her anyway. So next, let's get into the registered animals I have. It's going to be Mac over there, which is the one with the blue tag there. He is our registered bull. He's going to be our herd sire. I paid $1,800 for him. He has really desirable genetics, and he's going to be that homozygous polled instead of heterozygous polled, so he's going to only have polled calves, which was a desirable thing for us with the horned girls. We wanted to make sure that all of our calves didn't have horns at least. And then the 2 girls, that's Clara there,
and that's Winifred, next to Mac. And we paid $2,500 total for both them, so $1,250 a piece, and they are homozygous polled heifers, and obviously red and polled. So we got them. They're pretty desirable genetic cows and should do very well for us. I do have another bull. His name is Dean, but he's currently rented to another local Dexter producer. I'm gonna get him back in the spring. I paid $900 for him. He was 8 months old when I got him, and he is an unregistered bull. I thought I'd be able to register him when I got him, but it just ended up not working out that way. So that's really kind of how wide the board can go. So, you know, Gertie I paid $600 for, and Mac, our herd bull at only 6 months old, was $1,800, you know, and everything in between. So it really is a wide, kind of a wide market, and you really just have to decide what makes sense for your operation and what you're sort of going for. If you're only producing beef and you're like, I'm never going to sell bull calves, I'm never going to sell heifers for breeding or for show or anything like that, then by all means save the money, go unregistered. But if you're looking to start an operation that you're doing beef, sure, but you're also interested in being able to sell to other breeders and sell bull calves to other producers that are starting out and things of that nature, then registered might be the way to go. And how premium you go down that registered path is entirely up to you. Just because an animal is registered doesn't mean it's superior to an unregistered animal. There's a lot of registered genetics that aren't that great. You really kind of have to learn how to read the registry and know the names that you want to see to know what's what. But in general, those are kind of the differences in what you're looking at between the two routes. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments down below. If you like this video, like the video, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Say bye, Gertie.